Hello, friends. Welcome to Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is Manifest, the future of supply chain and logistics with my friend Katie Date. How's it going, Katie?
It's going great, Joe. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for making the time. We were trying to wedge you onto my calendar. Your calendar is a lot busier than mine. So, Katie, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
Thank you so much, Joe. So, my name is Katie Date. I am the Senior Vice President of Industry Relations and Strategic Initiatives at Manifest, the future of supply chain and logistics. Manifest is the premier end-to-end supply chain and logistics event out there. We are truly an ecosystem that attracts shippers, industry professionals, as well as the investor community, the startup community, as well as all of our solution providers as well. And Manifest is part of Connective, which probably many of you don't know, but it is a live events studio that we're just one part of.
Yep. Yep. So, we should say this right away. When is Manifest?
Manifest is coming up right around the corner, less than 4 weeks away. It is February 10th to the 12th at the Venetian this year, which is a brand new, beautiful venue for us. We have a huge expo floor, and the huge benefit of being at the Venetian is the hotel is attached to the expo and all of the event space. So technically, you could enter the Venetian on Sunday and not have to leave until you fly back home. And for me, home is Boston. So it's going to be a long flight to Vegas, but I'm looking forward to being there in less than a month.
Yes, yes, yes. Now, I went to the last few manifests. So, this is the fourth year.
Yep, this is the fourth year.
Now, the first year I missed, but I did talk to Courtney. I interviewed her right after that. I think we did a podcast called Reflection of Manifest. And I think they had 1,500, 1,400 some people there.
Yeah, that was at the heart of the Omicron.
COVID.
This was before I even had joined Manifest, and they were still doing testing and wearing masks.
So I always ask people who are on my podcast, what conferences will we see you at? It's a dumb question to ask you today, but that's how I am. And so I always were asking, and people said, I'm going to Manifest coming, this is going back 4 years. And I remember thinking, I don't know what that is, but I didn't ask. And then without any prompting, a number of people said, I just got back from Manifest. It was fantastic. I wasn't goading them on to say that because I didn't know anything about it. And they were like, oh, Ludacris was at the conference. I was like, what? I'm like, where is this at? So I reached out to Courtney, and I thought it was, so the first year was like 1,500, 1,400. Second year was 2,500, I think.
Yeah, almost 3,000. That was the year that I spoke.
Yep. And then last year, 4,000, 4,500, something like that.
Yeah, in that range.
And now this year, 6,000 people.
Yeah, the growth is unbelievable and truly a testament to, I always say that supply chain used to be like the dirty word, and now like supply chain is sexy. People want to talk about supply chain and logistics.
Katie, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. When I worked back in the 90s, I was working in engineering, and I remember I got a call from a recruiter, and he said, hey, we're looking for a guy like you, supply chain guy. And he kept saying supply chain guy, go in and fix this problem. And I was like, I don't know what the hell that is. And he kept saying supply chain. And finally, when we're done, I called another friend of mine who's a recruiter. I go, what is a supply chain? He goes, you're in supply chain. I was like, no, I work in engineering in an automotive company. And he said, yeah, but that's considered supply chain. Excuse me. Your automotive has a big supply chain. And I was like, we have suppliers, we have purchasing, and we have logistics, but we never called all of that supply chain really until the last 25, 30 years.
Yeah, even sooner. So I graduated from undergrad in 2003, and my first job was in a distribution center. And I don't think we talked about supply chain then. Yeah, it wasn't until 10 years later when I joined MIT and we started talking about supply chain, and it really caught on at that point.
Yep. And you mentioned the Venetian. So the last few years we were at Caesars, and we stayed in the Caesars. I forgot the name of the hotel I stayed in, but it was a little bit of a walk, a very nice walk over to Manifest. I did not mind that one bit. I will never say that wasn't a good
You're
start.
not one that got caught in the rain then. So last year there were people who stayed at Caesar's Palace, which is
Across the street. Yeah, I took the tunnel over. Yeah.
okay, probably from Harrah's or the Link or something
Yeah,
like that.
Harris.
Yeah. But this year, everything is all together inside, tons of restaurants inside the Venetian, a lot of the networking events, both that we're hosting will be in the expo area, but also a lot of the third parties are hosting events that are going to be in the Venetian. So it's it's super nice space and no worries of having to walk in the rain.
Yep. So I went to the Trimble conference maybe in the fall, not so long ago, and I stayed at the Venetian and I did exactly what you said. I never left. They dropped me off and I never left the hotel until I headed back to the it's massive. And by the way, it is newer and nicer.
So much. Yeah, so much. Did you have a chance to try some of they have delicious restaurants in there. Just
Well,
absolutely.
yeah, they have great restaurants. The gym is much nicer than Harrah's. Sorry, Harrah's. You gotta fix that gym. I say that, and people look at me and go, "You're not going to the gym." I go, it just doesn't show. So
Stress relief.
exactly, Katie. One more time on the timing, and by the way, there's still availability. If you want to go, you can go. So people are gonna. This is gonna publish on the 17th. Still time to get to Manifest, and I just booked my travel just now, and I got a hotel yesterday, so not a problem.
Yep, so there's still hotel rooms available in our block. So again, dates are February 10 to the 12th. There's still discounts available. There's still programs that you can apply for. We have the hosted shipper program. So if you're a member of a shipping company, definitely take a look at our website, reach out to me. Still rooms available. And the great thing about Vegas is flights are always pretty cheap. Like you can find a last minute flight pretty last minute and it's not gonna break the bank.
Manifest is one of those FOMO events because I've talked to friends who went and then they said, "Oh, I can't go this year." And then they, when you look on LinkedIn that week, you're like, everybody's there.
It's intentional, and yeah, it's a supply chain conference, but also there's so much fun to be had, whether it's the concert like you talked about at the closing party or all the cool things that we do on the expo floor. People really embrace being in Vegas and they let loose, and we provide lots of opportunities to network.
I think about last year. It's a little heartbreaking. I'll tell my sad story of woe. I saw some friends and we were just hanging out. They go, "Joe, come with us. We're going here or there, wherever." I was like, "No, I'm going to be a good boy and go back to my room." And they went and saw you two at the Sphere without me.
Oh,
and,
wow.
and they said that's where we're going. They came upon that. And then I found out the next day on LinkedIn. I was like, "Oh my God, what's wrong with me?"
I stared at the sphere from outside of my hotel window at Harrah's last year, but I still haven't been inside.
So I think where we're staying at Venetian is really close to the Sphere. So if you people want to go gawk at that, you can do that too. There's probably a show. Anyway, Katie, tell us a little bit about you. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you joined the mothership that is Manifest.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am, despite living in Boston for the last 15 years, I am a Midwest girl through and through. Grew up in southern Minnesota, went to the University of Wisconsin for undergrad, and started my career in operations, supply chain, training and development. Spent about 10 years doing that. Moved to Boston for my partner to go to grad school and did a little bit of consulting and then met the director of the MIT Center for Transportation and Logistics. And he was looking for someone who not only knew supply chain, but could speak the language of companies and had some industry experience and really bridge that gap between the researchers at the center and an industry. So that's what I started out doing, being that industry relations person, and spent 10 years there. I did a lot of different things while I was at the center. I oversaw the international network of centers. So that took me to amazing places like Malaysia and China and Latin America and all through Europe. And while I was there in 2017, I got the opportunity to sit at tables with some of the biggest supply chains in the world, I started noticing that in a lot of cases, I was the only woman at the table. And so in 2017, I founded the Women in Supply Chain Initiative at MIT and really dove into looking at the power of diversity and how it creates innovation within companies. And in 2023 was invited to be one of the keynote speakers at Manifest. And at that point, I had never heard of Manifest. I just took a leap of faith and went and spoke at the conference and took in everything that was the second year that it had to offer and just really fell in love with the mission of Manifest. And Courtney Muller, who is the president of Manifest, came to me and said, we had this like short, tiny little conversation backstage in between the two of us talking. And we continued the conversation. And she was like, would you ever consider leaving MIT? And at that point, it was an opportunity to do something a little bit different. And I really saw the magic that was created. And now this will be my second manifest being part of the team coming up. And I'm super excited with the growth that has happened with Manifest and all the potential for where we still can go.
Yes, I love it. I love it. And by the way, there's probably, when you think of the top logistics, well, I'll say supply chain schools, MIT is right up there at the top. I live about 45 minutes from Michigan State. They will always say they're in that conversation, but there are so many schools now. Somebody said to me, I live in Michigan. Michigan is one of the birthplaces of supply chain. And um, Western Michigan has a great program. Wayne State, these schools, all sorts of schools now have supply chain programs that didn't have them 10 years ago. And I think it's exciting because also when I worked in automotive, we always had purchasing and logistics and supplier development, all these things that were not, they were always under purchasing, but they also interacted with engineering and operations and manufacturing. We never knew where to put them. And now there's more, there was always professional purchasing people, but now the professional purchasing people have so much more a base if they come out of a supply chain school.
Yeah, and supply chain has a seat at the table now. You're seeing so many C-level positions now where supply chain really is has that seat at the table, and I credit the pandemic for certainly my family learning what supply chain was. It took them running out of toilet paper to finally realize what I do, but
I got to tell you, when about a year ago, I spoke at a local university here in Michigan, and I talked about supply chain, and one of the themes was, and I talked about, since we're in Michigan, I talked about Henry Ford at one time had this completely in-house supply chain. There was no suppliers. Everything was his own stuff. They take the ore out of the ground, they cut the trees down. Everything they were doing was done by Ford. And to some extent, when it's a new industry and you're the only one who gets it, you go, we have to do everything in house. Who else would you hand it off to? And the people they originally were working with were like buggy makers. So there was this time, not so long ago, we'll say 100 years ago, where it was completely integrated. The supply chain was the company. And now you're almost to a point, well, there you go. We are to a point in automotive where you say, I just want to do the design and the engineering and the purchasing, and then we'll hand off manufacturing, we'll hand off all the production of all these supplier parts. There's companies that do that. And it's amazing, and we've also seen the same in computers and software. For a long time, it was like the big companies, HP, would do everything themselves because who else could do it? Not anymore. Anyway, let's talk about some of these. I wrote down a few points that we wanted to talk about. The first one was, give us another overview of Manifest. People, the events, all the stuff we should expect when we get out there.
yeah, absolutely. So we're expecting 6,000 people, which is a huge amount of growth. And within that 6,000 people, we're going to have over 1,000 shippers, which I think is a huge differentiator for us. A lot of the biggest supply chains in the world, think of the Pepsis, the Procter and Gamble's, Unilever, but also some of the up and coming Farmer's Dog and Huckleberry and all sorts of different companies that are looking at the end-to-end supply chain from raw materials all the way through the finished goods and the reverse logistics. logistics that happen to give these products a second life. We also have a huge investor community that will be there, as well as our innovation stage, which is featuring startups that are going to continue to disrupt the supply chain. That's another thing that I think that the pandemic really helped us. The amount of supply chain tech that has come out just in the last 5 years, and the investment from the private equity community and the VC community is just, it's amazing, and it continues on and is so encouraging for the future of supply chain.
Yeah, yeah, and you mentioned all these people showing up, the shippers. One of the things I was asked to moderate a panel at Manifest, and I was thrilled to do it. And when the room was filled, I was like, "Oh my God, look at me! Everyone's here to see me." I was like, "Oh wait, I'm at the shipper panel." So it's all the ship. Everyone wants to
Everybody
see the
wants to,
shippers. It was
yeah.
standing room only, not for me, for all these shippers. But what was interesting to me, we talked about some of the challenges and some of the opportunities going on, and doing my job talking to all sorts of people about the technology they're using and new processes, new everything. You get the impression sometimes that the world is a perfect place. When you hear these shippers talk, you go, "Oh, whoa, they're coming from a very different place." There's more discussions of manual, of shortages, of trying to manage a whole bunch of logistics companies and tech. And I've thought, so when you hear these big names, and there's a lot of big names out there, and you start talking to them, you realize quickly that it is not all perfect there, because sometimes they might have implemented tech 20 years ago. They might have got a TMS 20 years ago, and now been using it, maybe even be on premise. And um, it's difficult to switch. It's difficult to switch suppliers. It's difficult to switch technology. So these companies, just because they're big, doesn't mean they don't have a lot of problems. And I think they would be the first ones. They were happy to share all their challenges at Manifest.
Yeah, absolutely. So this year we'll have over 120 shippers on stage, lots of them C-level, and all of these people have committed to sharing their war stories, sharing their lessons, and because they truly believe that's how supply chain is going to become better, is by learning across fences, which is, I think it's just, it's so special that they are excited to be on stage and share all of these lessons, and for people to come and discuss and continue the conversation back at their companies.
Yeah, and I talked to a, a jeans company, apparel company, and it's funny that to see them all there. And by the way, this is very international. We should also mention that. I'm shocked by how many languages you hear at Manifest. If you're standing in a group, there are 4 different languages happening around you.
Yeah, absolutely. So this year we should have probably over 50 countries represented. Earlier this week, I had a conversation with the Mexican Association of Freight Forwarders, and there's going to be a huge Latin American contingent that's going to be at Manifest. Obviously, a lot of companies have their headquarters in Europe, so a big European contingent, but we're seeing more people joining us from Asia and from Africa, which is so interesting to get those perspectives, because they're dealing with the same issues, but it has just a little bit different cultural flair to it, a little bit different regulations that they come up against. I'm really excited to hear from all these perspectives this year.
I gotta say, I personally got business from being at Manifest with a Israeli company. I met them there. Now they were listeners, but I actually met them at Manifest. And by the way, all there's this, since I already mentioned myself, I should mention that all the media companies are there. They have last year we had a media lunch, and all the media people showed up. We all know each other, but we don't always meet in person. So there's tons of opportunities. I'm doing 4 interviews there. All the podcasters I know are going out there. And it's not just podcasters, there's YouTube people. I spent a lot of time wandering around last year with Mother Trucker. He's a YouTube guy. And the year before, I spent hours wandering around with Dooner. Everyone knows Dooner and from What the Truck. And so everybody's there. And so there are lots of opportunity to meet those people and potentially be interviewed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Everyone that I've talked to so far, they think of Manifest kind of as the supply chain reunion to see all the people that you've been having these Zoom conversations with, to see them in person, which I'm okay with that. I like it.
It's the supply chain Super Bowl. And last year was at the few days before the Super Bowl. I think this
Yeah.
year it's Sunday is the Super Bowl. So February 9th is that we'll watch my Lions win it all. Anyway, I want to talk about the women's luncheon. Please tell us about that.
Yeah. So the women's lunch is the reason that I came to Manifest. That is was my first exposure to Manifest, and I certainly still hold it very dear and just credit Courtney, who's our president, with creating this and creating a space for these conversations. This year, the focus will be and the theme is mentorship. And oh, one thing that I should mention, it's called the women's lunch, but just as many men come to the lunch as women. That was the thing that surprised me as a speaker. I looked out in the audience and there were just as many men there as women, which is so encouraging and really speaks to the allyship that's being created through this lunch. So this year, for the first time, we're going to have one of our keynote speakers is going to be male and talking about allyship and mentorship. So both Mike Ringsdorf, who is from Mary Kay, as well as Tammy Wharton, who is CEO at Girl Scouts, will both be speaking on stage and talking about mentorship. Um, Also, Courtney, our president, will be kicking off the women's lunch. And then I have the pleasure of being able to get up after all these wonderful speakers and talk a little bit about mentorship. We're going to do a mini boot camp around mentorship. And for the first time, we're going to be using our proprietary technology to do some matching. So, people that are interested in either being a mentor or being a mentee can register through our app to be matched together to create some mentorship right there at Manifest. We'll be providing some resources for people to continue on with these mentor mentee relationships and a framework for how to go about it, which obviously this is a personal interest to me, but I think it's also important for the future of supply chain to create these relationships. You and I were talking before, a lot of times in our companies, we gravitate to the people that are like us. So to be matched with someone who has a little bit different background, who has a little bit different take on things, I think is going to create some really valuable connections. And I'm really excited to hear where this program will go.
Yeah, I like that you guys are trying to formalize a process that's always been informal. And I think before we hit the record button, we were talking about this is the tendency is for everyone to want to mentor the same person. They go, "Oh, that Katie is really smart and she's moving up in the world. I will mentor her, and everyone will know I'm mentoring her. So somehow that helps me."
It makes me better. Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the challenges with that is maybe Katie doesn't need any help in this role right now, but there's so many other people who are maybe the laggards who might a little help would help them be more successful in your company and in their career. And I always feel like everyone wants to mentor the guy who's winning, the gal who's winning. And we got to figure out a way because one of the things that's happening as the baby boomers retire, we all see that big drop off in there's not enough people. And we'll have more immigrants in this country, which is great, but we can't have somebody not be successful. And we can afford to have people unsuccessful in your organization and laying them off as if it's always their problem. I sometimes think
Not productive.
we hire the very best and then they don't work out because they aren't the very best. You're like, we hired the very best. Maybe you're not managing and developing those people. And that's where, again, that mentorship and development can come.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I'm really excited about it.
So you mentioned your cool technology. It's the only conference I go to that has this technology. Please talk about your tech.
Yeah. So we have I wish I had a badge here to show you, but we have the cool badges that on the back have a little tiny square. And in order to connect with someone, all you need to do is tap your little discs together, press it, and automatically into our app goes each other's information. So For me, the first time I saw it, I was just so in awe of it because I, over the years, had gone to so many conferences where you're like trying to scan QR codes and trying to zoom in on people. So it's a great way to exchange information. We also have the tech in our app where you can request meetings with people in our one-to-one meeting zone. So you can very easily, you're not having to figure out a location to meet. We have the zone, you can put in the table, book it together, and meet with people. And the it gives you the opportunity to ahead of time search out different solution providers and set meetings with them. Take a look at all of the different schedules, highlight your different sessions that you want to go to. It really helps to do your homework ahead of time. And I think with a big conference like Manifest with 6,000 people, doing your homework ahead of time is going to help you get the most out of your time.
I can tell you, having been to Manifest a few times already, that the mistake I made the first few times, it will not happen again. I'll say, "Oh, Katie, I look forward to seeing you at Manifest." There is a very good chance I would not see you at Manifest. And even you attending all the sessions, it is just a lot of people. So you really do have to plan and get some mobile phones. If you can get some mobile phones, get some plans ahead of time because it sometimes can be challenging to find everybody you're looking for. But that technology you described at the end, when I was going home from Manifest last year, I was at the airport. I downloaded all of my connections that I made into a CSV. I've got their email addresses, I've got their names, their companies, everything on these people. It is very slick because I'm not against handing out business cards. Anyone who's doing it, go ahead. But the challenge is somebody at some point somebody's got to go back and take that thing and make it digital.
Right.
That's always the
Yeah.
challenge we
We're
have.
taking out that step.
Yeah. And I still take business cards. I haven't given them out in a few years. Every once in a while, I think, oh, maybe I should get a business card, put a QR code on it. You don't necessarily have to do that for Manifest. I know some people are going to do it anyway because that's what they feel comfortable with, but it is really cool technology, and I don't see it anywhere else. I only have you for 7 more minutes to make get my money's worth. Announcements. Everybody goes to Manifest is making announcements. Please elaborate.
Yeah, I always say manifest is where the deals are made. We have so many companies that are going to be announcing product launches, they're going to be announcing new technology, they're going to be announcing partnerships. There's people that sign partnerships at it's really evolved into this place where because the whole ecosystem is there, people take advantage of that fact and they don't have to do a separate customer meeting. We actually have a lot of companies that this year are doing their like company on-sites at Manifest. So they're taking advantage of the fact that there's all sorts of people from different verticals from their companies attending and they're bringing them all together at a separate meeting, not the 10th to the 12th, but on the front end or the back end and saving that travel budget.
Yep. And I always get invited to little parties before us. So I went to the first year, I went to a venture capital company that I'm associated with. They invited me to one of their parties. I think it was that on the Sunday before Manifest, and there's always those going on too. So it's fantastic. We talked a little bit about there are a whole bunch of venture capital companies there. There's a lot of private equity companies there, and there's private equity people. I'll tell you my quick story that I told you before we hit record. I was at Manifest last year and I bumped into a private equity guy, maybe a VC guy, who knows? They all look the same.
Same
And
general thing. Yeah.
investors, let's just call them investors. And he said, "Oh, good to see you again, Joe." We had talked the year before at Manifest, and we were talking. And then I went back to my room, and then he sent me a text saying, "Hey, Joe, I listened to your last episode of logistics, and I like that guy. I might want to invest in that company." And I was like, "They're here. They're here. I'm going to text you his mobile phone. He's
Yeah.
here." And I was thinking, everybody, it's just a great place to not bump into. If you want to make deals are happening there, there's a lot of private equity guys, a lot of venture capital. And that's gotten a little more difficult to find that money. So if you're looking to raise some cash, that's the place to go.
Place to be.
Yep. So one other thing, 4 more minutes, entertainment this year, final night.
Yep. So we have our signature after party. This year it's going to be with Flowrider. So bring your boots with the fur and come on over to Brooklyn Bowl and have a private party with all of your closest supply chain friends. The parties are so fun. People have just had a jam-packed week. They've learned so much, they've networked, and they just want to let loose. And we always get acts that everyone knows the words to the songs, even if they don't want to admit it, but they let loose and have a great time, which is awesome.
Yeah, so the first year was Ludacris. The year after, I think it was Nelly, and I had the chance to
Last year was Neo.
yeah, Neo. So the last 2 years, I got to sit with my friends from Ryder. They had like VIP seats. I was like, I'm not going to get better tickets than these. So always a great time. So I'm going to summarize the best I can. Then I want to get your final thoughts on the topic. So I'm talking to my friend Katie Date. We're talking about Manifest, which starts February 10th, 11th, and 12th. I think a lot of people get there on February 9th. It's in Vegas at the Venetian, which I can tell you, I was just there. It is fantastic. It is, if I have a choice to go on vacation to Vegas, which I don't ever because I like to go anyway, I would say at the Venetian. Anyway, so we talked about this, the growth of Manifest and what it is. It's 6,000 supply chain people. It's not just logistics people, it's supply chain people, lots of shippers, lots of education people, lots of money people. It's everybody in the supply chain and logistics ecosystem is there. Anybody selling tech is there. By the way, we should probably make this point. It is very much a tech conference when you get
Yes.
out there. This is not talking about yesterday's news. Last year, the talk of the town was AI. Everyone was doing something with AI. I'm assuming we'll be doing that again this year, but all sorts of cool tech and lots of demonstrations. We talked a little bit about the women's luncheon. Very cool mentorship. Be there, be square. We talked about lots of announcements happening there. A lot of people save their announcements for Manifest because there's a big reach. We talked about the private equity VC and the investors are all there. And of course, Flowrider will be there. Final thoughts on the topic.
Don't have FOMO. If you haven't booked your ticket yet, make sure to book and come. It is the place to be. Like you said, be there or be square. It truly is. It's a great time. It's a great way to start the year. And don't be the person sitting at home on LinkedIn and see everyone else's photos. If you have questions, I am very available on LinkedIn. So please, any of your listeners that are having hesitations or questions, reach out to me and I'm happy to talk.
Yep. Katie, what I'll do is I'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile, a link to your website, and a link to getting tickets. Any other links you give me, I will put in the show notes. I'll probably put a few links to my previous conversations with Courtney and Pam because great events. And they've got, by the way, it's gotten better every single year. And this year's going to be even better
Even
than last
better.
year, which was
Yep.
fantastic. Anyway, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you for having me. And I look forward to seeing you in Vegas.
Yep, plan on it. And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.